This is a Nice Guys Patreon exclusive.
Welcome to another NHL team preview video for the upcoming 2024-2025 season, a Patreon exclusive. Ian Cameron, Alex B. Smith. We hope you're enjoying these NHL team preview videos. And today we will look at a team that's enjoyed a lot of success, specifically regular season success, the last few years. Not so much playoff success. And of course, that is the Carolina Hurricanes, a team that's been predominantly one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference, one of the top teams in the NHL. For many years. And I think for the first time in a while, the vibe for Carolina this offseason is a little unsettling, I guess you could say, with maybe where this team is headed. Of course, last year, when you look at the Hurricanes, it was another, pretty solid season overall, regular season-wise. There's no doubt the usual type of statistics that you're accustomed to seeing from Carolina in the regular season, where offensively, they were a top 10 team. I think they were slotted at 8th in the NHL last year as far as goals per game. Defensively, 4th in the NHL, goals against per game. The power play was 2nd in the NHL, an awesome power play, only behind Tampa Bay. And as has become the tradition under Rod Brind'Amour, top penalty killing team in the NHL last year, at least in the regular season. 86.4% penalty kill percentage last year for Carolina. So excellent on special teams once again, which you need to be successful. Top 10 offensive team, top 4 defensive team, a lot to like. So what's been the problem? What has kept Carolina from getting over that hump and at the very least getting to a Stanley Cup final all these years? Well, I think one of the things you have to point to is we know the blue line over the course of these last few years has been very strong. I think for the first time, and we saw this last year, they've built their blue line based on stout, strong, great defenders, keeping the puck out, blocking shots, positional play, being strong with the puck, not turning it over. And last year, Carolina had way more risk takers, I guess you could say, on the blue line, way more problem and concern spots on their blue line. When you think of, now an older Brent Burns, who's never been a defensive shutdown guy by any stretch of the imagination in his career, but, you're not always going to get him being a defensive stalwart, very good still as far as movement and shot from the point and power play and all that stuff, and can put up points issues. Obviously, Jacob Slavin is still, I think, one of the best all-around defensemen in the NHL, and certainly one of the better defensive-minded defensemen. You still have him. He's the cornerstone. Orlov last year was kind of up and down. Chatfield's a bit of a rover. We know Shane Gostisbehere, is someone that obviously has some defensive concerns, and it's going to be interesting now that they sign him in the offseason to a 3-year deal in free agency. You just basically made a blue line that I thought declined a little bit as far as their shutdown ability, and putting a Gostisbehere in there, again, who can put up numbers, good skater, offensive instincts are fine. Defensive instincts, not so much, not all the time from Shane Gostisbehere. So you're a little concerned about that. And even Sean Walker, someone else who they brought in the offseason, because, look, 5-year deal, they had to offset the loss of Brett Pesce, which is a huge loss. I think you could honestly say after Jacob Slavin, defensively, strictly defensively from the blue line, after Slavin, their next best guy was Brett Pesce. And, of course, now he's in New Jersey, making that Devils blue line a lot better and stronger defensively. And you lose that now with Carolina. You replace him with Sean Walker, who's solid at times in his own end, but it's kind of more so a skater again. And, offensively a little stronger than defensively. So you kind of see a blue line changing their spots a little bit, where there's a lot more susceptibility, I think, in your own end than what we've seen from a Carolina blue line in the past. We started to see it last year, and I think we might even see it even more this year when you add a Gostisbehere and a Walker and you take away a Brett Pesce, on this blue line for Carolina. So that's definitely something you want to, and Brady Shea is a loss that they're going to feel as well. You talk about a very well-rounded guy, and I think his defensive game has improved over the years with the Rangers, then with the Hurricanes, of course, now in Nashville. That's something you've got to overcome. So I actually have the arrow pointing down on the blue line a little bit for Carolina coming into this season. Up front, Sebastian Aho, outstanding. Can't really say much bad things about him. He was very good last year, once again, for the Hurricanes. Seth Jarvis, 33 goals, 34 assists, 67 points. He got the job done for them, had a very solid season overall. I still think there's more to give for Svechnikov. 59 games last year, 52 points. Now, he did miss some time due to injury, and injuries have now become a problem multiple seasons now for Andrei Svechnikov, but I think there's still room to maneuver and get better there. You look now at what they've got up front. Marty Necas, there was talk that he was going to part ways with the team, but they end up getting him re-signed. That's important. I think that he's going to be an important piece of this team moving forward, going into next season and beyond. The captain, Jordan Staal, still there. Jordan Martinook, I think, was one of the bright surprises, if you will, of the Carolina Hurricanes. Bright lights and the surprises of the team and what he was able to deliver. I know on the stat sheet it's only going to show 14 goals, 18 assists, but for a guy that's playing, lesser minutes, and especially at playoff time, he would step up for this team. There is some more questions with the bottom six this year, however. What can you get from Jack Roslovic? They bring in Will Carrier this year from the Vegas Golden Knights. Jack Drury, can he take a big step forward, big leap forward? They're going to need more from him this year as far as that forward group is concerned. Yes, Barry Kotkaniemi simply has to be better. I mean, this is looking like a unfortunate circumstance for them where they had the offer sheet situation with him years ago from Montreal. And last year, I mean, in 79 games, -4, 27 points, and only 12 goals. He needs to be better. You got to get more production from him than that. We will see if Kotkaniemi can do that, but I didn't like a lot of his game last year. And even Rod Brind'Amour, there were times when he'd skip playing him on certain shifts because of how bad at times his play got. So he's going to have to be a lot better. They do have some younger talent waiting in the wings, like Jackson Blake. They think very much of him as far as an offensive dynamo could be at the NHL level. Same with Bradley Nadeau. So these are two guys to watch in training camp. They really do have potential to make this team, Alex, because I think they're going to be crying out for offense on the bottom six this year, Carolina, maybe more than they have in the past. And if a Bradley Nadeau can impress at training camp, a Jackson Blake can impress at training camp and make the team, I think there's going to be more pressure on Rod Brind'Amour making those two guys part of the roster on opening night. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can push for some of those bottom six forward spots on this hockey team this season. Like I said, the blue line, I think a little weaker. Forward group, top six is fine, but I do get concerned about the bottom six. And in goaltending, where it feels like it's a broken record for Alex and I, like this team has been almost, for some reason, trying their damnedest to put up a blockade against our guy, Pyotr Kochetkov, and preventing him from being the bona fide number one goalie. And if there's ever a time where they're going to pivot from that way of thinking, it's now. Because as far as Freddie Anderson is concerned, now, Antti Raanta is no longer in the picture. Okay, that's a good thing. Yeah, he is no longer a member of this team, but you still did commit, of course, to Freddie Anderson, and it's going to be interesting to see what they do there because to me, Freddie Anderson, there's always concerns about that weak goal, that soft goal that he gives up. There's concerns about his age. There's concerns about the multiple injury setbacks he's had over the years, and all you're doing is still putting this guy above a guy that could be your future in net. And we still need to see more from Pyotr Kochetkov, 100%. I'm not saying for sure he's the number one guy, but what I do know about him is he's a competitor. He works extremely hard when he doesn't play to keep himself in a frame of mind and in a position to be good. His numbers at the NHL level last year were solid, 2.33 goals against, .911 save percentage. And keep in mind, he did get into the most games of his NHL career to this point, 42 games for the Carolina Hurricanes last year. That's almost double what he got into last year or 2 years ago, where he played 24 games for the Carolina Hurricanes. So I like that they accelerated it, but now it's time, I think, to give him the number one spot, or at the very least, give him every opportunity to win the number one spot. If he plays Freddie Anderson to a standstill in training camp, let's say they're pretty close. Freddie played pretty well, but so did Pyotr Kochetkov. You got to give it to Pyotr Kochetkov. It's time. You got to see what he can do when he gets 55, 60 games in a season. Give him the lion's share for the first time in his career and truly see if you've got a number one goalie. And it can't be any worse than some of the terrible goals I saw Freddie Anderson let in that series season-ending loss to the New York Rangers in the playoffs last year. That game where they got eliminated, Alex, that third period, That was bad from Freddie Anderson. There's no sugarcoating it. It was bad. It was goaltending that when you've got a Shesterkin on the other end, standing on his head, playing out of this world, you can't be giving up the goals Freddie Anderson did in that deciding game of that Rangers series last year. So I think it's Pyotr Kochetkov time. Will Rod Brindamore and the coaching staff listen? Fuck if I know. Tune in to find out. Stay tuned to find out. As far as Carolina, look, the arrow's pointing down for me a little bit. I mean, I'm leaning under their point total. I don't know about miss the play. I can't see them falling that far. I just think Brindamore's too good. The team overall is good enough to get into the playoffs. I don't see them missing, but boy, I think they're going to have to battle for their playoff positioning, maybe more than they have in years past. And I actually think an over team with totals. I really do. I think they're going to score. And I think that defense, that blue line, you can't tell me that's 1 through 6, a better shut you down blue line. When you're adding a Gostisbehere who can be a liability in his own end, Sean Walker's more skater, puck mover than he is shut you down, play solid defense on the blue line. You add him too, and you take away Pesce, who's your best shutdown guy on this team last year after Jacob Slavin. You can't tell me 1 through 6 this is as good of a blue line as far as playing shutdown defensive hockey. And especially if you're going to pair a weaker blue line with Freddie, those are definitely going to be some spots where you're going to, at least for me, be looking at some Carolina games going over the total this season. Alex, what do you think here for the Carolina Hurricanes?
Yeah, this is Hurricanes team. They're interesting. They have these great regular seasons, 3 years in a row now with 110 plus points or more. And then, like you said, they just fizzle out and have these kind of just odd endings to the postseason. And like I said, it seems like now they don't have as cohesive of a group as they once had. Those role players, those plug and play guys that they had, they were building themselves up kind of like a Pittsburgh, right? Where Pittsburgh, the strength we always talked about, the guys up front, the top 6, but their strength was always that they were able to pluck guys from their organization and put them into the bottom 6, and they were able to get those extra gritty goals, get those timely hits, play better defensively. That's what Carolina kind of seemed to be building up, that they had their top forward guys. You had the stars on the team, but the role players were what really carried the system. Now that you've had a shakeup amongst the role players, now, yeah, it just seems like everything's kind of anew with this Carolina team. Can the top 6 guys really carry this bunch for the majority of the season? Can one of these 2 goalies emerge to take the top spot and carry that throughout the entire season? Because Frederik Andersen, for all that he's dealt with and all the injuries and issues and so forth, he was 13-2 in the regular season last year in 16 games played. And that was also coming off of an injury that we thought would end his entire season, possibly his career.
Fair point. He played well coming back from injury in the regular season. You got to give him that.
Right. So we're seeing him now. Okay, now that you have Kochetkov, who's played, like you said, half the season, can you turn this around to where Kochetkov becomes the starter? And once again, you ride that 1A, 1B system we always talk about. And now Anderson can rest. And, okay, we know that Anderson can come back if he's got some time off and then play and give you 5 or 6 good games. And then you go back to Kochetkov. So there's a system here that could work, but it's just a matter of what does Brindamore and company choose to do, and can they sustain it throughout the whole year? And then when you look at New Jersey adding and seemingly getting back into the fold, the New York Rangers still being at the top of the division, the New York Islanders are still going to be a pesky team. The Flyers, have something to build off of, and the Penguins, they're still trying to hold on for dear life and get back into their playoff rounding of things. I kind of wish there was a market where we could bet on teams that would qualify as a wild card team, because I don't see Carolina winning this division. And it wouldn't shock me at all if Carolina ends up kind of being in a log jam and this Eastern Conference being so competitive where they need the wild card to find their way into the postseason. Now, that obviously would suggest that this is not as strong of a team over the last 3 years, and I do agree with that fact. But that also could be that kind of reset and recharge they need. If we can, this team maybe needs to play hard for 82 games to get ready for the playoffs. They don't need to coast through and be one of the top 2 teams in the East, and then all of a sudden they find themselves in a dogfight once the calendar turns to April.
So that maybe the elbow grease they put in the regular season prepares them for the elbow grease they need to put in the playoffs.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There are certain teams we see just kind of coast at the top, get into the postseason, and do absolutely nothing. Sometimes you need to fall down early in the year and then pick yourself up. And then, like you said, you're ready for actual battle and war once postseason comes around. I think that might be what Carolina needs. And that might be the only thing that really, would kind of save them toward being a team that could be a Stanley Cup contender. If they're winning this division, I wouldn't be betting on them to win the Stanley Cup at all. That's and that seems bizarre to think. You'd think one of the top four teams in the league. You look at them to win. I don't see that. I could see them easily being. They go have another 115-point season, and it's business as usual, and they're able to navigate everything smoothly. Then all of a sudden, everything's gonna go haywire in the first or second round of the playoffs, and we're talking about another year with this core group failing to achieve a top goal. So it's an interesting thing, and I have two futures that are correlated with one another, and it involves the goaltending, of course. Frederick Anderson, I'm going under 23.5 wins with him. I think, like I said, if you're looking to win with this team and move things forward, not just right now, but the future, you give Kochetkov the bulk of the starts, meaning that okay, 23 wins would be a heck of a lot for a backup goalie, especially if I think he's only going to get 25 to 30 starts. So I'm going under off of that alone. Also, we're talking about a guy who is injury prone, who just came off of a very serious injury on top of having nagging injuries. So under 23.5 wins at $1.10. That's a play that I love quite a bit as far as player props go. And I'm taking a small sprinkle with Pyotr Kochetkov 50 to 1 to win the Vezina. Because if this team does end up having another 110-point season, and he's the guy getting the bulk of the games, he's going to be the guy getting the bulk of the wins. He ends up having 5 or 6 shutouts, 30, 35 wins, keep that goals against under 2.5. He could be one of those top 3 finalists for the Vezina, and at 50 to 1, I think that's a solid value play. So Kochetkov 50 to 1 to be a Vezina finalist, or at least to win it. But I'm playing it with the intention of him at least being in the top 3, and also under 23.5 wins for Frederick Anderson.
I agree with both of those. Those both might be on my portfolio when it comes to season win totals and futures bets too that I send out right before the season. I like both of them. I think they have to pivot to Pyotr Kochetkov, give him that opportunity. And if he does get most of the starts and he is named the #1 goalie coming out of training camp this year, he's got that ability and that high-end upside. Let's say you get the most out of Pyotr Kochetkov. He's a #1 guy, and he plays at the level that I think he's capable of, like being a really good, dominant, borderline elite goalie. He's going to be in the mix then for the Vezina. He will be. And that's the goal with betting the Vezina price, 40, 50 to 1 on Pyotr Kochetkov. It's not just, we're betting it because we're betting him to win. No, you're betting him to be in position to win, right, as in a finalist. Because as long as he's a finalist, you're going to have those options.
And he's a guy, like you said, he's very competitive. He's a gamer. If Brind'Amour takes the reins off and says, you're the starter, he's a guy who would have no problem playing 50, 55, even 60 games. Now, I have been adamant saying that that's not something any team should do these days. But he's definitely one of those guys who they can rely on in that spot. We obviously know he could trust him to play 55 games before Anderson. So it's definitely good value when you look at all the parameters involving this goaltending room.
No doubt. I think that's two of the better bets you can make, Carolina preseason. Never mind season point totals or futures or anything else like that, or any of player props for goals or anything. Those are two of the more solid bets I think you could maybe look toward making with Carolina right there with the Anderson under wins and Pyotr Kochetkov Vezina, assuming I think it's they're going to make that switch and actually give Pyotr the every chance to be the #1 out of training camp. And if he is, you're going to be in a pretty solid spot there with that. There you have it. Carolina Hurricanes for the upcoming 2024, 2025 season. This has been another NHL team season preview video right here on the Ice Guys Patreon exclusive. We hope you're enjoying these season preview videos, and we will see you again next time.